Okay, thank you very much. So welcome all to ServCollab's second ideation workshop on building capacity to solve humanity's problems, the refugee crisis. Today we have three speakers. Ray Fisk, who is the founder of ServCollab. He is also professor of marketing at Texas State University. Silke Boning, professor of business administration at the University of Hamburg, Germany. And Sertan Kabadegi, he's project officer at ServCollab and also professor of marketing at Fordham University. And I'm Radula Tsiotu for the new people who attend the event, and I'm the communications officer of ServCollab. For those who haven't attended a ServCollab event before, ServCollab is a non-profit organization aiming at conducting collaborative research with colleagues from various disciplines to elevate human experience and serve our society. Today we have three speakers who have published recently and are interested on refugee issues. The latest publication is at World Forum, Economic Forum, and also we have seen some publications at the Journal of Public Policy Marketing, and some other publications at the Journal of Service Research. The way you are going to run this workshop will be, I will ask a few questions to each of the speakers. We will go with rounds of questions, and at the end of each round, the audience can ask questions or make comments or write on the chat anything that you feel it is relevant. So I will start with Ray. First of all, Ray, congratulations for the ISIP award. I have to say that ServCollab received its first award from the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals a few days ago. And I would like to ask you to explain a little bit about the award and what is ISIP, and of course, how you feel about this award. What does it mean to you and to ServCollab and to all its volunteers?
Thank you, Radula. I'll start with the very last part of what you brought up. It's delightful to receive the award. So that's how I feel about it. I think that's how all of us that have been involved feel about it. One of the things I think is true for lots of people in lots of roles in life is that early encouragement always matters. And so in many ways, receiving this award is early encouragement. So specifically the award that ISIP has selected us for is one called the Distinguished Recognition Award for Service Innovation. Now, of course, ISIP itself is the International Society for Service Innovation Professionals, so it makes sense that they would put service innovation even in their title of it. And to give you just the statement that we received from ISIP, the Distinguished Recognition Award is given each year to submissions that, in the judgment of the ISIP Award Committee, represent innovative and impactful service designs and implementations from which service innovators around the world can derive inspiration. And specifically, the certificate that they sent us also stated as a summary that ServCollab is building research capacity to tackle the large service system problems of the world with a parenthetical note, a huge task requiring inclusive and transdisciplinary collaborations. And I should add that I was quite surprised that we received this not that many months, actually many weeks after we'd first submitted the documentation back in February. I really thought that since they were going to have a lot of candidates that the awards committee might need more time, but they have processed numerous applications from lots of parts of the world for different categories, because ISIP gives many awards. So they were quite fast, which I'm impressed by as well. And we have one of the co-founders of ISIP with us. So if I'm about to tell you all more about ISIP, but Jim, if I get anything wrong, if it doesn't disrupt your morning tea there, please correct me with anything I might get wrong. But the key thing about ISIP is that it is a nonprofit membership organization for individuals and institutions. So some nonprofit membership groups only have individual members and some only have organizations. They do both. So that's collaboration in terms of the internal organizational structure of university faculty, business people, nonprofit leaders, government leaders, a wide variety of people in various roles, all tied to service innovation. And they've now been they're in their 10th year, so they've been at it a while now. They do various events. They do various awards. Obviously, is the part of the reason we're even talking about them now. So we're delighted that this is the organization that we are receiving recognition from first, and hopefully more opportunities to be recognized. But we of course would have to say that nothing we're doing is in hopes of winning an award. Everything we're doing is in hopes of mattering. But it's nice, like I said, early encouragement always matters. So Jim, did I miss anything?
No, it was great. I just got back in from a hike as well, because I take a nice walk before I do anything in the morning, and having my morning tea. But you said it very well, and I just want to pass my congratulations on again. It was really, Ralph Badinelli, who runs our award process, he's done it for multiple years, with a very efficient scoring sheet, and I really appreciate you submitting. And I do believe it is an inspiration, especially to the transdisciplinary global service innovation community. And so congratulations again, and I look forward to the agenda today.
Thank you very much. Great.
I can confirm that all ServCollab volunteers were very excited when we heard about, the award, and thank you very much. So I will continue with 2 questions to Silke. Silke, you are specialized in business administration, if I understand well, and you're doing research on refugees. Why? What inspires you?
Indeed, it's maybe a bit surprising, because most of the professorships and chairs in Germany, and I guess also in the US, are more function oriented. So we have a lot of chairs in marketing, finance, of course, human resource management, etc., etc. But in our department and university, it's a bit different, because I'm in the department of socioeconomics, and we always try to do both. So solving social problems with economic approaches. And the grand challenges like the refugee crisis, but also climate change, for example, or I don't know, digital transformation and things like that are so huge challenges, and we need partnerships from all sectors. So we need the public sectors and nonprofit sector, and also the private sector and companies all working together. And that is why in my chair is the denomination, the official is business administration, in particular managing public, private, and nonprofit organizations. So,
however, I think that it has to do also with your personal interest, because you could choose another area, right? To study instead of refugees, because let's be honest, sometimes we hear that marketing and business people should not touch social issues, should focus on consumers or on citizens. We're talking about public administration.
Yeah, that's right. So it is a hard project, so to say, but I also be involved in other topics, like, for example, looking for solutions for the homeless, for example. I'm also personally in a nonprofit organization that is that's mission is on the homeless, for example. But in 2015, during the peak of the refugee crisis in Germany, so it was a must do, yeah, because so it was so massive, the influx of the refugees, and so many people arrived at the border and needed help. And again, today we have the same situation with the conflict of the Ukraine war. So that I had the feeling that I need to do something. And the president from our university asked me to become the representative of the refugee representative of our university. So I agreed on that. So, yeah.
I see. Recently, you published a paper on JSR about transformative service initiatives. After reading your article, I thought that actually, you're leading this article, to be honest. There are several colleagues that co-authored the article, including Ray and Sertan. I wonder if this article was written about refugees or about vulnerable consumers in general. And can you tell us more about those transformative service initiatives idea?
Yeah, that was, of course, also a very, I think, important piece. And we started to focus on what we call transformative service initiatives. Having in mind that, and we observed during the refugee crisis in 2015 that a lot of nonprofit organizations, but also other organizations from companies, volunteers, started such initiatives to help refugees, for example, to get housing or to get better access to the job market. Or in our case, we started an initiative at the university to help refugees to get better access to higher education. But it was not so easy, I think, because the context is a hot topic, but on the other side, you have to be broad enough to really give a good theoretical contribution. So we discussed a lot internally, but also with the reviewer, with the editorial board. So about the broadness of our concept, and we ended up with broad perspective that the transformative service initiative is something for all vulnerable consumer groups, so to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Silke. I'll go now and ask Sertan Kabadayi. You are specialized, Sertan, in services marketing. However, lately you're doing also research on refugees. Why? How did this interest on refugee issues started?
Thank you. Thank you, Rodolfo.
Yes.
I mean, in fact, I'm being asked this question a lot recently. I think many people, they just don't see the connection. You know, I was trained in marketing. I got my PhD in marketing. Then I switched to services much later. And when I was still trying to understand, find out my path within services, I listened to one presentation and, you know, my life has kind of changed. My at least research life has kind of changed. And the presenter was Ray Fisk himself, you know, and he was talking about TSR, transformative service research and well-being. So, you know, last couple of years, my research focus has been on TSR, especially on improving well-being. And when we think about reducing suffering and improving well-being, of course, you know, who can just forget about refugees? You know, as a large group, there are millions of refugees in the world, and they are created, they become refugees, not because of war or internal conflicts, but also climate crisis is creating a lot of refugees as well. Also, as Ray says all the time, refugees are part of the service ecosystem, and refugee problems are in fact service problems, service failures. So, there is a lot to look into refugee problem from services perspective. And one last thing, the personal thing, maybe much before than many other people in Europe, in US, since my background is Turkish, I'm from Turkey, and Turkey has the largest number of refugees in the world in terms of the number of people, around I think officially around 8 million refugees in Turkey. So it's part of the daily life. It's part of the daily conversation. Whenever I look at the Turkish newspapers, I talk to someone in Turkey, there's always some reference to refugee issue. So this is why when I put them all together, I've been doing a lot of refugee-related stuff. And of course, I got great colleagues and co-authors in the process. And two of them are here in this call, Ray and Silke. And in fact, the third one, I also saw Nadina. Nadina is also on the call as well. So we have done some good work around refugees.
Okay, thank you, Sultan. And while you are doing research on refugees, and this is very challenging. I can understand because being also, as an academic in marketing, we face different challenges, when we're trying to help the needy or the vulnerable consumers with our research. What are some challenges with publishing a Finnish paper in academic journals on topics that are related to refugees specifically, or to vulnerable consumers in general?
Yeah, as you said, doing research around refugees is challenging, but publishing is a different story in itself. A couple of challenges reflecting some of my previous experiences and also what I heard from some other colleagues. One of them is that still sometimes editors, associate editors and reviewers, they need to be convinced about the importance of refugee research. I think on a humanitarian level, they all agree that refugees are important, we have to pay attention, etc., etc. But when it comes to academic research, they need to be convinced. And in some cases, I think editors or journals, they look for citations, maybe understandably. So as Silke just mentioned, when you try to do research about just refugees, it's not broad enough. It's not generalizable enough. It's not big enough. So I think that's a kind of mindset that needs to be changed. Also, what I had personally in my own research, some reviewers say, okay, this is great, but what about the company's bottom line? What about the company's financial performance? I mean, all you say about refugees, how does that translate into a company bottom line? And I'm like, they don't have to be about company bottom line all the time. Sometimes helping those refugees is part of a bigger community or societal well-being that we all have to pay attention. And the third one, also, I had that problem, we had that problem maybe. Sometimes implications or recommendations may get political. And I think some reviewers, AEs, or editors, also they feel a little uneasy about that. But if you think about that, refugee issue is a political issue. And then, we cannot just shy away from getting political in our recommendations. I think there needs to be some mindset change maybe going forward. These are the three challenges that I can think of just from the top of my head.
Well, personally, I think that all issues are political issues. There is no issue that is not political. As my ancestors used to say, all human beings are political beings. So I agree with you. And also, do you think that the Ukrainian crisis will change the mentality of the editors and the associated editors, even of the researchers? Because recently I saw an editor of a consumer behavior journal posting and asking immediately papers on refugee issues. And I was surprised.
I mean, I think Ukraine refugee crisis or Ukraine crisis in general has become very visible all over the world. You don't get to see the presidents of the countries, of the people that the refugees come from on the news all the time. So I think because of that visibility, and also let's be honest, it's very close to Europe. I mean, what happens in Ukraine directly affects what's going on in Europe and all around the world. I think people started paying more attention to refugee crisis in Ukraine. In one side, I feel a little disappointed because all refugees need the same kind of treatment and same kind of attention. You know, they're all human beings at the end of the day. But on the other hand, you know, ends justify means in one way. Maybe because of this visibility of Ukrainian refugee crisis, all other refugees will receive more attention in near future. So, you know, it's kind of, I have some conflicting thoughts about that, but I want to believe that we are in the right path, and I hope more people will do research on refugee crisis. It's very urgent, and time is ticking that, you know, more people need to be involved.
Okay, thank you. Please keep that last point for the last round of questions, because I would like you to elaborate a little bit more. So I'm turning to Ray now, and Ray, at least 1 year ago, you indicated that the major theme for ServCollab for last year and this year will be refugees, the refugees crisis. Why did you pick up this topic? You know, considering that you were starting ServCollab, and this topic might not be that attractive to certain, you know, people or a group of people.
Thank you, Radula. I should give a little background, since I've got my 3 key collaborators on making this our first project in this call with us. And Soke initiated a transformative service research event at the Transformative Consumer Research Conference at Florida State in the summer of 2019. And that's how Sertan and I got involved with Soke, as her as the instigator of this. At the time, I was just about a year into developing the ideas for ServCollab, because I had announced in 2018 that I was going to work on it. And I was working with our advisory board with ServCollab on writing an article and pondering, well, if you're going to start something that you really think needs to change things, the question in my mind was constantly, where do you start? Where do you start? And I think starting positions matter. And I didn't want to pick something easy, partly because I didn't want people laughing at us saying, well, oh, sure, you said you were going to do something that mattered, but you picked something easy. And certainly refugees is not an easy topic. But the reasons why, when I thought about it, and then I pitched it to Soke and Sertan, and then the 3 of us pitched it to the rest of the group of 13 of us in total. The reason I thought it really made good sense is because I see it as a profoundly difficult problem that our species has never properly solved. I really think that there have been refugees across the history of our planet, and they have been mistreated in many, many cases across the world's history. And certainly in modern times, all the statistics say that we have massive numbers of refugees in modern history, and that the problems are not getting in any way better. And of course, Sertan was just talking about some of the key reasons why so much of the world's paying attention to this latest crisis that is bringing refugees into many countries near Ukraine. But the problem's ancient. And in fact, I think it's so ancient that if all of us could track all of our ancestors all the way back to our early origins as a member of the human species, we all have refugee ancestors, is my hunch. But the boundaries of countries and whatever that was called changed across the history. But there are some other issues too that I think are fundamental. It's an inclusion problem, and I'd already led a research project on inclusion, and I really thought, well, refugees to me are symbolic of an inclusion problem that's greater than most, because there are inclusion problems that are a lack of inclusion because you're vulnerable, like Silke was talking about. There are lots of vulnerabilities, but refugees are more vulnerable. And there are inclusion problems because of gender issues in some societies. Genders are discriminated against, or racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds. There are all these various ways of not including people. But refugees include all those things. Refugees include all the possible ways of being discriminated against. Those are also refugees. So they end up being cursed by the problem of having needs, and often are the least helped because they are a special kind of problem, and it's not their fault, but they need cultural inclusion. They are fleeing their own culture. They're going to a new culture where they might not know anybody there. They might not have even the ability to speak the local language, have no understanding of the cultural systems in terms of how do you introduce yourself to people, how do you find a job, how do you do so many things. So they are in so many ways incredibly vulnerable because they've left their cultural place where they started. So given that this has been true for such a long time, it seems to me that there's a great need for global solutions to that. There really should be. And to me, it should be more like what we already see in smaller scale ways in country after country, city after city. If someone has a healthcare emergency in the developed world, ambulances rush in to help. If someone has a fire, the fire trucks rush in to put the fire out. But if someone's a refugee, well, isn't that too bad? Is too often what's happening. Although certainly the latest crisis that has happened in Ukraine, at this point, it seems that many of the people trying to help the Ukrainian refugees are doing their very best. But Sertan mentioned that, but what about all those other people who were neglected before the Ukrainian refugees? Surely the world could build systems that if you are refugees, and there will be more, if you are a refugee, things will be done better. One other thing I need to emphasize, since this is Earth Day, is that many of these refugees that have happened across world history have been refugees because of climate change, not just recent times, but in ancient times too. Famines and floods have been part of this planet's history for a very long time. And there's even a nonprofit dedicated to just climate refugees because there's so many people that are in that category of being a climate refugee today. But there is the political aspect to it, like was already mentioned. But they are victims of political systems in the sense that once they're out of their native political system, the other political system doesn't always know what to do. But this is where we as a species need global solutions. And the United Nations is trying, but the United Nations clearly needs help. So I'll stop with that.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Is anybody from the audience that would like to make a question to our speakers? Amir, can you help me please with the comments or any questions?
We don't have any question or comment yet, but I have a question myself for Silke, if I may. So
yes,
you rightly mentioned in order to publish in prestigious journals, we need to make our research more generalizable. But there is always a risk of, as further we get from the context, there is a risk of reducing the context-specific outcomes of our research for that particular community. So how we can make a balance between making a generalizable research, but at the same time having context-specific influence over for that particular community.
Yeah, Amir, you are totally right. So I think, so I would love to focus really on the refugee context if it's possible to publish that context in a journal and to focus on that. And Sertan already mentioned it. It needs maybe a bit of time to change the perspective of reviewers and also editors that having, let's say, refugee in a title, is something we can do and we need to do. So it is true that when this is a very specific context and it comes along with very specific problems to solve, and therefore I really think that we need to focus more on the context. So context specific concepts are needed in this case, I think. That's my opinion. And I have a question I saw a name, Chris Brewer or something like that. Is that right? And I remembered an email from 2 days ago that you are the co-author of a consumer literacy article. Is that right? He's gone.
Chris Brewer? No, he's here. Chris?
He might not be hearing you, so could be
maybe
Chris Brewster.
Maybe.
Brewster, yeah.
Yeah,
See the name, yeah.
Anyway, we can ask him later.
He just posted in the chat that his audio.
He cannot get his audio.
Oh, well.
Oh, okay. So because I'm very interested in literacy and the relationship of literacy and refugee work, so, but next time.
Hopefully, if Chris can fix, the problem, he can answer later. Let me continue with my questions to Silke. Silke, in Germany, it seems a lot of government and EU funded supported refugee-related research, even in non-marketing business and fields. Is it helpful? I mean, do you think that all these funds actually have a return on investment for the purpose they're directed to?
I'm not quite sure if I really agree with your impression. So I think the impression is deceiving because, of course, refugee topic, that is a hot topic, it is relevant, and there are some calls on refugees. But on the other side, funding is always a competitive task, and the competition is high to get good funding. And in Germany, for example, the highest agency you can ask for funding, research funding, is the German Funding Association. And in that association, I searched before our ServCollab event, only 3 or 4 projects were funded. So it is not the case that we have a lot of funding for refugee work. And I must admit that also in the case of our refugee project, GSR project, that was not funded. And we also got the message from the German Academic Exchange Agency, that is a funder of our refugee study orientation program. The budget is now half percent, so 50% only left. So in comparison to from our start in 2016, so it's declining, and so always hard to get funding. Yeah.
I see. Thank you. And since EU funds research projects on refugee issues, however, it pays Turkey significant amounts of money to keep refugees in its territory and not enter Europe. Do you think this is, from one side, paying research, having, several calls on research and initiatives on refugees, on the other side, pay Turkey to keep those refugees, in its territory? Do you think this is a case of refugee washing, if I could say?
Yeah, maybe Sertan can help me to answer that question, because that is a very political and very tricky question. So I would like to start to say, for me, the term refugee washing is a horrible term. Yeah. So what was the goal of this EU-Turkey contract in 2016, I think the overall goal was to stop illegal entrance of refugees to the EU and to stop the massiveness of the refugee flows. And I think that is something I think is not right, because fleeing from war is not illegal. It is nothing we have to stop. We have to help these refugees to get in a better position, in a safe and healthy environment. So the whole deal, you know, it is of course a political decision, but I think the whole deal is more a hostile than a humanitarian approach, and that is also maybe I like the difference between hostile and hospitable refugee systems. We wrote on that in our Journal of Public and Policy and Marketing article, and this is a ideal, I think, example for that, for hostile refugee systems and decisions. Sertan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think that was a very unfortunate case of, if I can call, double jeopardy or double vulnerability case, because those refugees were already vulnerable, but then they were weaponized, if you want, or they were politicized by the Turkish government at that time to have better negotiations with EU and with Germany. And I think some mistakes were also made on the German side, which they agreed to some kind of deal. So that was very unfortunate. I think it was initiated mostly for political reasons. In fact, that is the topic nowadays in Turkey, because, you know, people say that, okay, those people, they needed help, they needed place, they fled their countries, but what is the integration policies? You know, how do we integrate them into the society, into communities? I think we will keep hearing about those issues going forward, and we need to be, I think, alert so that we will not be part of some conversations just for political purposes only. You know, as we said before, everything is political, and this is a very political issue, but these integration policies and all that stuff, we all need to be very, very careful with.
And it's of course nice to see that the situation now is changing a bit. Yeah, for the Ukrainians, of course, we see that they are now allowed to immediately get a work permission in Germany. They can start working from day one on. And Hamburg, for example, decided yesterday that also students from, for example, African countries like Sudan, who have studied before in the Ukraine, are now allowed to stay in Germany and in Hamburg. And of course, some of the others think that is a bit unfair situation, but I think for them and for the whole system, it's good that we see a change in the system. But of course, we have a lot of topics. It's not only about work permission, it's also about healthcare, about housing, and so on and so on. So many important areas we need to focus on.
Thank you both. Thank you. Sertan, given your publications on the topics related to refugees, you are probably asked to review refugee-related papers submitted to various journals. What are some of the common problems that you see in those submissions? Please also consider the special issue we yesterday did at the Journal of Services Marketing and inform us about.
Yeah, Radula, you're right. I mean, probably Ray and Silke and some other colleagues as well. We receive papers to review and all that stuff. I think a couple of issues they stick out first at the beginning. especially when it comes to literature review. A lot of folks, they still try to stick to marketing literature, services literature, business literature, but there's a whole lot other literature going out there. I mean, there are journals specifically dedicated to immigrant or refugee issues. You know, there's Journal of Refugee Studies, Journal of Immigrant and Refugee Studies, Refugees Survey Quarter. There are so many journals out there. There's a whole literature. There's business law, law, management, organizational behavior, education, healthcare. So I think one common issue nowadays, that's the first thing that I do. When I receive a paper to review about refugees, I first, without reading anything, I just go to the reference list and I just look at what literatures they look at, what journals they look at. That's number one. Number two is there is that assumption sometimes that all refugees are the same homogeneous group. You know, they are just the refugees, so they all have the same issues, same problems and all. And again, as we try to make a case in our paper at JPPM, refugees go through different stages, different phases in their journey. So depending on where they are, they have different needs, they have different challenges. So we have to look at them differently. Today, a Ukrainian refugee in Germany is not the same refugee as Syrian refugee in Germany because of the timing, because of their experiences. What about refugees in Middle East? What about refugees in South America, for example? So treating all refugees as one group is a issue, is a problem. And one last thing, you know, sometimes when I read the papers, I can feel the passion. You know, they're very passionate. This is a topic that you need to be passionate about. But at the end of the day, you still need to make a case. You still need to clarify your contributions. Passion is important. Passion helps, but passion will not make the paper go through all the publication process as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Serkan. And I'm sure you follow the recent refugee crisis in Ukraine, and we have discussed, we have exchanged emails about. There are press articles identifying discriminatory and racist behaviors within the Ukrainian refugees, for example, refugees from African countries, and between Ukrainians and other refugee groups, like Syrians from the international community. What are your thoughts? You see that the international community is reacting completely different towards, you know, specific refugee groups. How research could address this issue, and how we can help as, you know, service researchers?
Yes, you know, we all, at least in my case, I personally support Ukraine, and I think those people are going through very difficult times and all. There's nothing, this is not about the people, the Ukrainian people that have to leave their countries and all that stuff. But I think sometimes the way we structure organizations, even international aid organizations, in their approach, they can be a little bit exclusive. They can be a little bit, they can be picky. I think some of them could be, again, unconscious, but I think all these examples, we have to discuss them publicly. You know, all those international aid organizations, governments, you know, we have to recognize first that this problem exists. And again, this is nothing about the refugees themselves, people themselves, but it's all about how we approach to those people to help them and all that stuff. I think we have to start recognizing that there's a problem there, and then we have to find maybe different alternative solutions, different paths to help those problems. I mean, I agree that there is that kind of maybe those issues exist in Europe, in America and all, but even in my own country, I mean, Turkey gets refugees from Syria, but also from African countries and also from Afghanistan. And if you talk to Turkish people, some people, they make a case referring to specific group of refugees in their responses or in their reactions. So unfortunately, this is almost like a universal human trait, which needs to change, which needs to change. It is very disheartening to read all the stories, especially coming from Ukraine, even though sometimes they may not reflect the reality, perceptions matter. So, I think all those people with all the good intentions to help them, they also need to consider applying more inclusive approaches in their efforts as well. And Rodula, I can keep going on and on. I'm very passionate about this, but given the time frame, I think we all have to be a little bit more mindful in our efforts.
I see your point, and I agree. I think also the media plays a significant role, in encouraging or discouraging people, and also sometimes is how people identify with others, the similarities. I often hear in Greece, for example, that the Ukrainians are the white and Orthodox, because we relate also in terms of the religion of the Ukrainians. But of course, Syrians are Muslims, so we're not as friendly, let's say. Thank you very much. I know those are sensitive topics, and I understand, sometimes if you don't feel very comfortable or you think that the questions are too political, but I think we need to consider them given the complexity of the specific, of the refugee crisis over the last decade. Is there, let me go back to the audience. Is there anybody who would like to make a question or other comments?
I would like to hear about future projects. Do you plan to focus on a refugee project in maybe, let's say, next year or so?
This is to the audience. This question is to the audience or to ServCollab?
No, to the audience.
Okay.
I like that Silke put the audience on the spot. Quite. Yes, okay, I like this.
Well, one of the purpose of this workshop is to see who is interested on the topic and form teams in order to meet either personally at ServSig or online and collaborate in order to conduct research and publish on the topic. So whoever is interested from the audience can freely, express interest.
Can I go first, Rodula?
Yes,
well,
please.
Just in response to Silke's question, that's the whole topic of my PhD study. And then at this time, just wrapping up the loose ends of my PhD, I'm kind of carving out papers out of my PhD, which I have the same problem as you mentioned, in order how to make it something interesting to editors, but at the same time, just being committed to the context of my research as well. So this has been my PhD, and I think it will remain a kind of significant part of my research interest for future. We have a couple of good questions from Jim, but I believe he had to leave. So do you want me to ask those questions, Rodula?
Yes, please.
Yes, so
Thank you, Amir.
Yes, there is a question about how could AI digital twin models that represent all stakeholders' political perspectives allow us to create better models for scientific publication?
Great.
Yeah, let me jump in on that one. Jim and I have talked about the concept of artificial intelligence, digital twins on multiple occasions. And now that I've had a chance, because of Jim, to learn as much about it as I have, I think the first place I would start is to link it to an idea that we've used in many contexts in business training, especially in design work, where personas are used to represent different possible customers that organizations might try to serve. So to me, what's fascinating about an artificial intelligence logic for digital twins is that it might be potentially possible to simulate what happens if you have possible kinds of situations with different kinds of refugees, and to simulate what will happen if you have a more hospitable refugee service system versus if you have a less hospitable, more hostile refugee system, to simulate that before you do real experiments on humans. Because right now what's happening is real experiments on humans, and they are unethical as hell when you're mistreating people who are desperate. I mean, there are human subjects research rules in virtually every organization that does human subjects research. But what there isn't, and there should be, is there aren't enough rules on how to treat humans that are desperately in need. We need better rules for that. But these simulation systems of digital twins, to me, might allow some large-scale simulations to help predict the possibility and prevent the worst cases of things going badly because of a crisis. And if you think about the number of things that we're likely to see in the future with climate change, that would be one of the spots I would want a digital twin, sort of a simulation, to go, to look at what if there is famine here or flood there or fire here. What would that potentially do in terms of possible needs? But by being able to simulate in a large scale the needs of a large group of people, that's far better than any persona systems that I've ever seen in business, where they had to do it, imagine that imagination in an analog mode, and they rarely had more than 10 personas. You could do personas with a digital twin logic in the millions, or at least thousands. So to me, there's some fascinating things that are possible. And this is, to me, among the many things that artificial intelligence systems could offer to help humans in ways that we couldn't do before artificial intelligence was possible.
Thank you very much, Ray. I wish Jim was here with us so he can elaborate more. Is there any other question or comment from the audience?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you, May. Okay, I'll go back to Ray.
And
yes.
I just wanted to add over Ray's answer. I'm not an expert by any chance on the digital twins bit, but when it comes to AI and simulations, the exercise of building the digital twins and models can give us a bit more insights into the social values and cultural values of those political perspectives and those stakeholders. And just going through that exercise can help us probably pinpoint some problematic areas that can help us resolve or at least address some of the problems in those specific areas. So that was just my input. And I think we have someone that wanted to also add to the conversation, perhaps Arvi. I'm not sure if you're preparing yourself to ask a question.
I don't see. Is there any other person?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you very much, Karim. Thank you. And I know we're running out of time. One last question for each of our speakers. Ray, how does ServCollab plan to grow capacity to work on improving the refugee service system? What are the plans?
Thank you, Radula. Obviously, this is a beginning effort on the part of ServCollab. It's our first project area, and we certainly intend to do other projects later, but this one clearly needs a lot of work. So we're really focusing on building capacity in terms of numbers of researchers who might work on it, because this is a global problem. It needs a broad scale effort, not just from any one region or any one country or any one discipline, because we need as many disciplines, as many different people who might be interested. And I really think we need to bring some of these disciplinary efforts that are all in different directions together. Many, many years ago when I was an early PhD student, there was an article on marketing as exchange, and there was a phrase in it that has stuck with me all the years since, in which Richard Bergosa, the author, said that we are not students of a discipline, we're students of problems. And I really think that if we as scholars and as concerned humans view ourselves as students of problems, that point about it's not disciplines, it's about problems applies to academic disciplines. It applies to politics. It's not about the politics, it's about the humans in need. And the politics should be organized around serving those needs. So we are hoping to help organize momentum, because we realize there's a lot of people going different directions. And at this stage, it's to me a little bit like random acts of improvements in various parts of the world. One of my biggest hopes for ServCollab is we can help bring people together so we can be more systematic, because service systems are one of our topic areas in service research. And the very fact that service systems covers both the social areas from the social sciences, and service systems includes the economic logics. And Soki's in a group that is socioeconomic, which I love, because of course that you can't avoid both in your group because you put it in the name, which is great in my view. But we really need to bring things together on behalf of our fellow species. And we shouldn't be in the cycle, which is too often preventing this research in many, many cases, of blaming the victims. The solutions first require that you not blame the victim, that you help the victim, instead of saying, well, it's your fault. And there's just a long, long list of people that are victims of various problems, not just refugees. That is not a solution. That is dodging the problem to blame the victim. The only right way to address the refugee crisis is to try to work together. And fundamentally, that's why I call it ServCollab, because the collab part is about working together. So I'll stop with that. But we do, I should remind everyone, we do have our first article about ServCollab, and in fact, perhaps the only article, which we talked about elevating the human experience through service research collaborations. And we talk more about the goals in terms of building capacity across all of our efforts in the future. But refugees clearly deserves a lot of effort in the future.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Silke, given your interest on the topic, are you planning to collaborate with ServCollab on future research projects? Do you think interdisciplinary research on the topic is feasible?
I definitely plan to continue collaborating with ServCollab and also collaborating with all the co-authors, Nadina, Sertan, Ray, and all the others on those topics. In Glasgow, for example, at ServSig, we will present a paper on refugees' access to the labor market, and also we want to look at different target groups, the refugees, compared to the high potential internationals coming to Germany. But adding to what Ray earlier said, I know that he used the term victims, but I know that, of course, he also thinks that we are not looking only on refugees as victims. So it's important that we need also to change the perspective and see them as opportunities, as something that brings us cultural change, for example, and what the refugee group brings to us as a country or a community. And that is also an important topic to research on. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sertan, as a project officer of ServCollab, which future initiatives are you planning in the next few months and probably, next year? We cannot hear you, Sertan, please.
Of course, it has to happen at least once in every Zoom meeting. So I think the most, the closest one will be at the ServSig conference in Glasgow in June, as Silke mentioned. There will be 2 sessions endorsed by ServCollab as part of the ServSig conference. And one of those sessions will be on refugees. And I know that Silke will be there presenting. Amir, are you there also presenting? as well, and I will be presenting as well. So there will be a lot of refugee-related research in that session as well. We are also lucky that one of the plenary sessions of the conference will be also around refugees as well. So it will be ServCollab plenary session, and then Amir is helping us to finalize, to confirm the speakers and panelists as well. We hope that it's gonna be very interesting, motivational and inspirational as well. And we also hope that maybe some folks, some colleagues who are here with us today or will listen to this recording later, they will also join us in Glasgow, probably on Saturday, the second day, so that we can have some small group of people, researchers, start thinking or discussing some potential ideas as well. We will share those details with everyone. But as Ray mentioned at the beginning, this was one of our initial research teams, but you know, it will continue because the problems are there. As Ray mentioned, you know, we are here to try to help with those problems. And as Silke mentioned that she's working on multiple projects, I work on multiple projects. And then the good thing is that there are so many junior but very passionate researchers from around the world. They're also reaching out to us to start new projects, new collaborations as well. So we are open to that. We will announce our new guidelines for research collaborations soon. So anyone who is interested in collaborating with us, please feel free to email me, to reach out to me or Ray or anyone, so that we can start the conversation. You know, I remember the JPPM paper. It all started for me with one email from Silke. I mean, that was a wonderful journey. Sometimes that one email leads to a wonderful journey and collaborations. I think that's the key behind all our efforts here at ServCollab.
That's true, Sertan. Thank you very much. One communication is enough, you know, to start many a new trip, a new adventure. I wonder if today's event has intrigued any of the audience for doing research or considering doing research on refugees. Or let me go and ask the basic question. Why do you attend the event today? Did you attend the event? Can you tell us? Gabriela, our permanent.
I have to unmute. Hi, everyone. It was really interesting. Glad to see you. Hope to see you all in Glasgow. Finally, meet you in presence. And well, I joined because well, especially now with the Ukrainian war, it touched my heart, and it's something I think we need to do something. And I think service research can do a lot. So I'm interested in well-being, transformative service research in well-being, and how can we help refugees, not just from Ukraine. As the point I think is, and I agree with Sertan when he said that, well, it's Europe, it's close to us, so it touches our heart, and it's women and children that are most refugees, as opposed to being men from Syria, Muslims, and well, it's not fair, but they are seen differently from all of us, the world. So the perspective of being from Syria or from Ukraine is completely different, and it should not be. I agree that it's not the same being refugee from different parts of the world. Unfortunately, the world doesn't see them as equal. So I think we can do something as scholars. So I'd like very much to also to do something to add to those kinds of that research. So that's why I joined. So I heard your opinions and be more aware of what is being done. And hope
thank you very much, Gabriela.
Be able to collaborate, and looking forward to see those sessions in Glasgow, Sertan.
Sorry,
to see you.
Yeah, sorry, previously
yes.
I was, yeah, actually I'm still a PhD student. Like I was really interested on the transformative research. So particularly in consumer vulnerability, so I was thinking that this discussion would be helpful for me. That's why I was just I was really interested on listening to you all. So as colleagues in consumer vulnerability and empowering the people. So that's why I just joined with the discussion.
Thank you very much. And we hope that you'll keep, communicating with us and attend our events and probably email to us with your contact information so we can start a journey together.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me add that since she's a PhD student and Amir is further into his PhD research perhaps than she is, that those two should definitely talk, because it always helps to be able to talk to people further ahead of you in PhD work. And I'm super happy that both of you are getting into the topic as a PhD student. That delights me a lot to know that that's true, because I think for anybody doing PhD research, it becomes the beginning of opportunities in your career. And starting with something as big as a problem as refugees is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the audience who would like to explain to us what is his or her interest on the workshop today? Hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh. Sorry, I just wanted to listen everyone before jumping in. I have completed my PhD in marketing on the relationship between consumption and well-being through social and psychological capital. So my whole PhD was about refugees. So I was involved with them for the last 7 years. My PhD didn't last that long, but my interest in the topic was due to the very nature of the issue which is taking place in Turkey, like Sertan said. I had visited Syria before war, and seeing those Syrians here as refugees with a definitely different identity just struck me, because my perception, it was different. I saw them in their own place as regular people like you and I, regardless of their skin color, that they were regular human beings. Then all of a sudden they became refugees, slighted, discriminated. And I wondered how they were coping with that, and how could possibly consumption help them. I really, what I found throughout my study was, even though the context is refugees, there are lots of things we can learn from them in terms of coping with the general struggles of life. Because during the pandemic, we all struggled to feel normalcy, right? Our lives got disrupted and we needed to feel normalcy. We needed to feel some sort of control. These were all the things we needed to deal with, and refugees do deal with those things very well in everyday life. So there are things transferable, even though the context is very specific, is what I found. And I'm here because I know there are lots of great, there's lots of great research going on in ServCollab, and we are doing some things with Sertan, the initial phases, and too many things from everybody, including him here. And I just wanted to learn. That was the reason I came.
Thank you very much. We hope that you continue, attending our events, and since you are collaborating with Sertan, you probably are informed about every initiative that we're taking.
Thank you very much for these great opportunities, and thank you, Ray, Silke, Sertan. The very first event I attended inspired me a lot. So regardless of what I'm busy with, I would like to join any event you host.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else from the audience who would like to talk?
There are two comments, Radula, if I can read.
Yes, please, Amir.
The first one is from Arvi. He says, I have other people in the room, thus do not want to speak loud. The refugee situation in Estonia is rather hard and getting even harder. New people from Ukraine are steadily arriving. And then there was another comment from Nadina, and she said, sorry, I have to run to another meeting. As a member of the ServCollab, I'm passionate about research that has impact for a better world. I look forward to further projects and a meeting on the refugee topic. Nice to meet and see colleagues.
Great, great. Christina, I see you at the audience. Do you want to say anything?
I'm actually just listening here. I'm recovering from COVID, so that's why I'm just listening in. And, yes, but
I hope you get well
of course,
soon.
Thank you. But of course, these topics are very important, so that's why I think it's important also to know what's going on. So that's why I'm here, and I of course very much support ServCollab's all projects. So
thank you very much for attending the event. And I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that you were, with COVID, and I wouldn't bother you. Thank you very much. So I don't know if something else is left to say, our speakers, if they wanna conclude with any remarks.
Dula, let me just add one more thing. Obviously,
Okay.
we've talked quite a bit about the summer events coming up, and certainly if any of you are likely to get to the ServCig conference in Glasgow, Scotland, we've got the two events that have already been mentioned, and those will be great opportunities to interact with other people who are interested and also to learn more from those sessions. And we have projects, or excuse me, sessions that are video sessions in the works for the rest of the year. We're very early in this year in terms of our video activities. We have more things coming. We won't advertise them until we're ready, but rest assured that we will be busily trying to help develop the topics. And it won't always just be refugees that we might do videos on. We've got various video topics, video approaches, like the ServCollab one we did not long ago with our very first person, Len Berry, and then Jim Sporer was the second. We're working on another ServCollab opportunity in the fall. And once we've got that set up on a date, we'll be able to talk about that. But lots more to come is the short story. But Radula, you're the communications officer. I should let you do the lots more to come. So.
No, today I have another. Thank you very much, Ray. I would like to thank the three speakers, Ray and Silke and Sertan, for the great discussion. I hope my questions were not that hard, and if they were at some point or a little bit political, I apologize. I was trying just to, how can I say, set a little bit fire, in the discussion, because there are different aspects on the topic, and definitely, as I said before, it's a very complex topic and a very timely topic. And we thank you for discussing about the different aspects of studying and researching refugees, and also for your time, because we have asked, this is the second event, we have asked Silke also to participate and talk. And also I would like to thank Karim for the technical assistance, and Amir with the Q&A session, and everybody and all of you who attend the event and participate. And we hope that we will see you in our next events, in our next initiatives, and please feel free to communicate with us. If you are interested in any kind of research that is related to ServCollab, just email us. You don't need to do anything else, or if you see us at ServCig, just come and talk to us, and we'll be happy to find ways to collaborate with you and include you in research teams. Thank you very much.